Hello, I'm Callie.
I'm Lauren.
And welcome to the Book Common Room podcast.
All right, welcome to the Book Common Room podcast, where we learn to love literature in whatever form that is. Both of us are kind of building the plane as we fly on this podcast. Something that we're super excited about, but we're also kind of learning as we go. But I guess the biggest goal is that we just want to learn to love literature, whether that's escapism, whether that's because it challenges how you view the world, or it helps you see the world in a different way. That's kind of where we're aiming with this podcast.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of people fall out of love of literature in high school because you have to read it.
Yeah.
And we're just kind of thinking with this podcast that you could come read what we've got planned out and just like learn to re-love literature again.
Yeah.
Or if you've never been a reader, you can become a reader.
Yeah. And my experience with reading too is like always has been centered around some form of like discussion about it. Like I feel like I love reading, but I think it goes hand in hand with like needing to talk to someone about it.
Yeah.
and so this is the place for you.
Yep. Okay, awesome. So for the first 2 episodes, what we're going to do is we're going to interview each other, talk about the 8 books that have made us, and then just talk a little about who we are. So I'm going to start. I'm going to interview Lauren. Wonderful. So Lauren, do you want to just like give a quick summary? Who are you?
Oh,
who is Lauren?
Who am I? I am currently a student. I'm in my undergrad. I'm a baby.
A baby.
I am an English major. And like a lot of people are like, oh man, I could never sit through a grammar class. And let me tell you, I've only done it once. And it wasn't really a grammar class. It's more about rhetoric and like how we speak. So really, I've just been reading, which is great, and analyzing and writing about it. So that's been my undergrad. And I graduate in December. I'm so excited.
We're so excited. Can't wait for
me. And what else? I love being outside. I love reading. And I'm obsessed with my husband.
Cute.
Shout out to him. But
shout out to the husband.
But yeah, that's me in a nutshell.
Love it. Okay, so Lauren, what got you into reading?
Okay. This is kind of an easy one, but I think it's the same for a lot of people. So, Harry Potter.
Basic, but we love it.
Basic, but we adore it. And like for a long time, that was the only thing I read. Like Harry Potter got me to read, but it also was like kind of like kept me in a bubble for years. Like I would only read Harry Potter. I didn't think there was like anything out there that I would enjoy as much as Harry Potter. And also like with reading, there's like a community aspect, which we've kind of like referenced. And I felt like Harry Potter kind of has this like built-in community and friendship. And so I've like been thinking a lot about it, and I realized that like my childhood friends came from our bond with Harry Potter. Like, true. And we still like, I still wear my Harry Potter socks, merchandise that I've had like for years as like gifts that we've given each other. And so I think, what got me to read is Harry Potter.
I love that. Yeah. Okay, so Harry Potter got into reading, but going past that, what would you think are the 8 books that made you and why? They made you as a reader, got you to keep reading. What would they be?
Okay. And the interesting thing about that is like some of the books that I've kind of curated as my 8 books that have made me are books that I don't read all the time. They're like not books I revisit very often, but they're books that have definitely shaped me, I guess. And this is not in any particular order. This is just my blurb of 8 books. But Jane Eyre was a mega book by Charlotte Bronte. And it was like the first classic piece I had read in high school that wasn't required. And it was because of Callie. Callie had this, and she had written notes in her book.
I like writing notes.
And because she did that, I wrote them too. So it kind of became this community book, and I kind of felt bad doing it. I was like, maybe I shouldn't be writing in her book. But it was like, I just would like analyze everything in that book, and it was, I don't know, my first introduction to like pure enjoyment of classical literature. And also, like, with a very strong heroine that I wanted to be more like. Like, I adore Jane because of, like, her softness and kindness and that being such a strength. So,
We love Jane.
Yeah, we love Jane. My goodness. Okay. Count of Monte Cristo was a major book as well of classic pieces by Alexander Dumas.
That is like, that's a
hefty
book.
It's a hefty
I'm
one.
impressed.
And even more hefty if you read the unabridged version, which I did for extra credit, and it was for a class.
Oh, okay.
But it was like my freshman year of class, and it was like a world lit class, but it really wasn't. It was mainly Western literature. We had read no Eastern literature.
Yeah.
But we read Count of Monte Cristo, and I just loved it. I just felt like it was a very well balanced like book of like everything you would want. Because it had like romance, it had action, but it also had substance, which is why I loved it. I was like, I realized I need book with like substance to it and like depth, and I felt... I mean, like, you read the last bit of Count of Monte Cristo and you just weep. Because it's just so well made. Because it's like this guy who kind of is playing God and then realizing it. And then, like, basically is, like, telling people in his life what not to do. And it's very cool. It's very cool. I loved it.
Yeah.
Okay. I could talk forever about these books. But, anyways. Okay, third that I had on my list was Gilead by Marilyn Robinson.
Gilead.
Yes. Well, some people do.
Well,
it's slow.
Gilead.
It's very slow.
But like the slowness, it's beautiful.
I know. I adore it. It's very slow paced. And
it's soft.
It's soft.
That's how I would say it.
It's very soft. But like doesn't mean that like, I mean, when you read this book, I was thinking like crazy though. Like I felt like I was writing notes,
I was
marking pages. Yeah. And I don't know, like there's just something very special about this book for me. And I love how it explores the theme of grace, particularly. It also, like, you read Marilyn Robinson and you're just like, I wish I could think the way she writes, and I wish I could write the way that she writes.
I mean, she's a great American author for a reason.
I know. She's absolutely fantastic. And yeah, like I think my first introduction to her was High School Housekeepers, I think is what it's called.
Yeah.
Didn't realize that, read Gilead, and then I was like, oh my goodness, like that's her. Like you can just tell like the way she writes, and Gilead is just amazing. And it's just, I think, very moving to hear this perspective of a parent and their love for their child. Yeah, it's very religious, very slow paced. But it was very compelling for me.
No, well, it's got so many things. Like racism.
Yeah.
Like generational trauma.
Yeah.
There's so many things.
And even like, and the whole premise is that the main character, John Ames, is old and is not going to see his son grow up, who he had with a woman he loved. And she's very young. Yeah. Like there's a major age gap there. But it's just very moving, and I love that book, and that is one that I do enjoy revisiting. The next book I didn't think would make this list, but it did, and it's Blue Highways by
Never heard of this.
Heatmoon. Didn't hear about it until I took like this on. It was like, I think it was like a travel narrative class, and we just had to read books of people on the road. And they were fiction, and then there was nonfiction, and then this one is a nonfiction book. And I just think about it all the time. I think that's why it's on my list, is because like it shaped me to like, I don't know, want to connect with people more, I guess. Like the whole premise of this book, it's nonfiction, which it's not usually my cup of tea. I don't really like nonfiction books all that much. It really depends on the book and like how well it's written. But it introduced me like to travel literature and like photojournalism, because in the book he like takes photos of the people he encounters and the places. And what he had done, like he had something traumatic happen to him. I won't spoil anything. But he basically goes on this like road trip on the outskirts of the US. So he travels all around in his car. And I think they're called the Blue Highways. And I don't think they exist anymore with like how our road systems work now for navigation. But like he took these roads and like recorded himself. Recorded through writing his experiences. And I pulled a quote because I was like, this is important to talk about. But he says like like everyone describes William Lee's Heat Moon as a travel writer. And as a product, his books are labeled travel logs. But he heavily argues against that and what travel writing really is to him. And I think that's like where the compelling aspect of his writing really hits home for me. And in an interview, he says, "I've not mentioned my distaste for calling my books travelogues, and I don't much cotton to being called a travel writer. It is inaccurately limiting. I believe my work goes well beyond mere travel. If it doesn't, then my efforts have failed. The physical journeys are a means of getting into larger issues, and I must say, issues rarely addressed in most travel writing fully deserving the name. Most of what occurs in my books are levers to pry at a larger topic. They're jacks to lift something, often unwieldy, and let light in. So I hope, anyway."
Oof.
I know.
I could write like that.
I know. And so I read him and like his book, and I was just like, wow, like he uses travel as like a medium to interact with like otherness, like people different from you, people you don't know, like strangers, and being able to like, and obviously there's like ethics of like how he's portraying these people, because like it's from his perspective, not how they really are. He's only getting a snippet of their lives. But it was always very compelling to read about these people that he would meet and the places he would go. So that is like a major part of like my books that have like made me. Harry Potter, of course, is on there. I felt like that's a cheat because it was what got me to read.
It has to be
But
on
it has
the
to be
8.
on my 8. It has to be on my 8. If I had to choose though a book from the whole series, and maybe we can argue about this another time, but it's The Half-Blood Prince. Which
Half-Blood Prince is a good one.
I like love all the books, but it's shorter. But
I honestly
think
thought you would have said Prisoner of Azkaban.
that's my favorite movie.
Oh.
That's my favorite movie adaptation. I do like the book, but the sixth one's my favorite, and I think it's because you get into the mind of Voldemort a little bit.
Oh, okay. That's true.
And that part was I was like, oh.
This is when like the fifth book, everything just goes down.
Oh yeah, I know.
And then you get
You're
into the
bawling.
sixth one.
You're bawling. You're still grieving Sirius, and then now you're like getting into the mind of a psycho, but it's so cool.
Oh, so good.
It's so cool. So I had to put it on there. The Lord of the Rings needed to be on there as well.
Amazing.
I have only read them once. Okay. And I definitely should reread them again because I know I've missed things. But I think the reason Lord of the Rings is on my list, and Harry Potter will always be a treasure, but Lord of the Rings took it to the next level.
Yes. Yeah.
Like in writing and
graduated.
everything, it like showed me what world building could do. Like what, I don't know, like it just showed me how much like, I don't know, like creativity comes from fantasy, but also still being grounded in like reality somehow. Yeah. Because like when I read Lord of the Rings, I was like, wow, like I'm seeing parallels. Like even though it's like severe, like evil versus goodness happening, there's still some nuance that I was like, I felt like I could easily relate to, even though it was like a world that like very much is not our world.
Yeah.
And like, I think Tolkien had said something like this before, but he had said that legends and myths are made of truths, basically, and that oftentimes those truths come across best through the mediums of legends and myths. Yeah. And I felt like Lord of the Rings is like such a prime example of like absolute truths. Like they're not questioned. They're not universal truths. Like absolute truths that are in Lord of the Rings that everyone could understand. But are like so well put in a fantasy hero arc, like a journey. Yeah. I love that. I just love the journey aspect of it, I guess. Love Lord of the Rings.
Love Lord of the Rings.
Love Lord of the Rings. All about it. Okay, so now we're on number 7. You guys are wondering what number we were on. It's never ending. Frankenstein by Mary Shelley. I had to put another classic on there because it definitely has shaped who I am, I feel like, in a lot of ways. Both in like, I don't know, the sense of like how I want to be and like what to be cautious of, but also of like the I don't know, it made me love literature for sure. Yeah. Like I read Mary Shelley and I was like, sheesh. Like, and I've read things, this might be getting into the weeds a little bit, but I've read edits that her husband, Percy Bysshe Shelley, gave her while she was writing. And he's very flowery with his language. She's very simple and straightforward, which I love. Yes. I love that. That's how I talk. That's how I like to read. That's how I like to think. But Percy's so flowery, and his edits were all like they weren't like any edit on content or how the flow. It was just, let's make this flowery. And she was like, okay. And like, so sometimes you get glimpses of the Mary that's like her writing, and then like Shelley's influence on her, which is like kind of frustrating. But just like, I don't know, I just loved her writing. I just loved the story. And it was one of those like aha moments when I read Frankenstein, which came very late in life, but was like,
I haven't read it, so
it's okay.
It's okay.
But it was basically where like I realized this is so dumb. I should have realized this when I like read Percy Jackson as a kid, but like not all like monsters who seem like monsters are monsters, and like not all protagonists that seem like heroes are actually heroes. And also like how much our society has like adapted the story of Frankenstein, which is like heavily Frankenstein, Sherlock Holmes, like heavily adapted stories that we keep coming back to. But Frankenstein like is far more compelling to read it as a book. Yeah. Because like, I don't know, for theater performances, they changed it a lot. And that's not what the book is doing. The book is like very much telling like the monster from the protagonist's perspective. At least for me. Yeah. And when I was reading it, yeah, I just love that book. And the way it ended, I loved how it ended, which is controversial. So like, I would love to hear what people think about Frankenstein.
Did you like the ending?
I loved it. And I want them to know that I loved it.
I loved it.
Even if, I don't know, maybe they liked it too, but some people were like, what the heck is happening? But it's really good. Yeah. And I loved it, and I recommend it. Okay, this was really hard for me to decide what is like, what makes it, what doesn't. Yeah. But I chose something kind of, it's not obscure, but it's very like much of a staple of like, I feel like me, I don't know, and like in my experience of reading. But In Memoriam. I don't know, have you read that?
I've heard of it, but I haven't read it.
Okay. So In Memoriam is by Alfred Lord Tennyson. Oh. Okay. And he spends 17 years grieving, basically, for his best friend. I might cry, maybe not, but I'm just going to put it there. But he spent 17 years collecting and writing poetry that would make up this In Memoriam. Yeah. And he's lamenting the death of, his name's Arthur Hallam. He's a good friend of his, and he got suddenly sick and died. And I think he was on a tour traveling somewhere that I'm not going to say because I'm not actually sure. But like, he's spending these years like kind of grappling with faith and doubt, and like that is something that I don't know why, but I'm always compelled by whatever faith it is, whatever like they're going through. There's like this wrestling of like the soul, like in this collection of poetry, and he resolves to like, despite the holes in his like personal like human experience, he reconciles those with like the religious notions that he was taught that somehow good will come from suffering. Like somehow there's like something good or something like a lesson to be learned.
And almost like rejoice in the suffering. Yeah.
Like it's I don't know. It's just interesting because like when you're going through something and someone's like, oh, it's for a reason, that's never helpful. No. And this is like, I don't know, like I feel like this is a book meant to be with someone who's like wrestling or at least has wrestled, and it really it resonated with me a lot. And it's not like I've had severe loss or like shocking loss like his, where like suddenly your best friend is gone.
You've had loss.
I've had loss, but not to that degree. But I feel like I can still resonate with him, especially in trying to understand like why bad things happen to good people, kind of a thing. Yeah. And he never really has like a satisfying resolution. There's not like a catch-all answer. But he does beautifully put something. And we might need to unpack this a little bit, but I'm going to read it because this is like, I don't know, like the books on my list are because they're things that I think about often. Which I feel like you are like what you do, but also like what you preoccupy your mind with. Oh yeah. And this is always on my mind. But he says like, it's so good. I should memorize it. You think I love it so much? No, I don't have it memorized. I know just one line, but it's like he says, "Perplexed in faith, but pure in deeds. At last he beat his music out. Their lives more faith in honest doubt than in half the creeds. He fought his doubts and gathered strength. He would not make his judgment blind. He faced the specters of the mind and laid them. Thus he came at length." And I love that because he's confronting doubt. It's not like I'm afraid of like what my doubt might reveal, and it might reveal like this crumbling of everything that I've believed. But he's like really confronting it, and I just love where he says, "There lies more faith in honest doubt than half the creeds." And it's almost like that's blind faith when you just like won't accept the nuances of life. Yeah. But he's like, okay, but there are, and I'm struggling with it, and I love that, and I thought that was so good and just so beautiful, and like that's like the climax of this book is like this moment where he's like, there's a lot of faith somehow in the fact that you're doubting, which I think is kind of a paradox, I guess, in a lot of ways. And then he goes and like unpacks that, and it's just beautiful. And I think about it all the time, and I mean, all these people I like would love to write. Like I need to spend time imitating how these people write, to, I don't know, like express how I think and feel, because it's just so beautiful. And I don't know, like I don't know. This book was like a revelation for me, and I was like, oh, and I loved it, and it just is a part of me now.
Aw.
Like you read that and you're just like, dang, you gotta like take a break and like
soak it
just
in.
Like sit with it and be like, what is he talking about? But I think the biggest thing from this list is that books essentially grew my empathy in ways I never imagined. And like being able to understand people, but also being able to better understand myself and the world I live in, which is kind of crazy because like in these imaginative places, or like in these experiences of people I've never met, like they're able to like unpack my reality in a lot of ways, and helps me cope with my reality. So I don't know. Yeah, that's where we're at.
That's my favorite thing about literature in general, is to read something that opens your mind to something you never really thought about before.
Yeah.
Like, just very recently, I've discovered really why I love American literature.
Oh, yeah.
Because it's like, I don't know, like, I feel like growing up, I'm like, I love, like, British romance, like, and all that kind of stuff, but just very recently. And I think it's because, like, there's something about American literature that's so gritty. And just very, like, well, you've got, like, To Kill a Mockingbird.
Oh, yeah. Oh, my gosh.
I would never understand how it is to be a person who's lived in that time, but then like a black person who's gone through racism and different things like that. I'll never understand that.
And for it to end in a way that's like very controversial, and it's very, and I don't know, I'm using controversial in a very loose term here, but like in the sense that it's very horrifying and problematic.
And I'll talk about this in my 8 books, but I love If Beale Street Could Talk.
Oh, yes.
James Baldwin. James Baldwin is another person that I discovered. And I was like, man, he needs to be on, like, the great American list. The American author list. But it's just, like, a place that like, it's in America. I feel like I know America. I'm American. I should know. But I've never lived a life like that. Yeah. And that's my favorite part about literature is I have the empathy now. I, like, really... I should say I have the sympathy now. Because I'll never like, truly understand it. I have the privilege of never truly understanding that. But now I have the sympathy to, like, at least be able to get there.
Yeah, and be careful of what you say.
Yeah, yeah.
And, like, being conscientious of, like, the myriad of experiences.
Yeah. But that's just, like, one example of the wide thing literature can do. Because it can do that with any situation, any world.
But totally. Love that. I love that.
Okay, so my next question, this is when we're going to get into a little bit of a controversial topic. Do you have any books that you regret reading?
Yes. Yes, I do. And I feel like I cheated because I read ahead and saw some of the things Callie put. So I'm going to let her talk about one of them I put on my list. I'm not going to say it. So that way you can share it.
Okay. I like
and
it.
I can bounce.
Yes.
We can bounce off each other. But, yeah, I think this is kind of a cheat on how I'm answering this question. But I have books that I've regretted rereading.
Okay. Interesting.
Books I've regretted revisiting. Which isn't always the case. Like, I feel... And... You know, there's always the argument of, like, there's so many books out there. Like, why would you waste the time rereading a book you've already known? I always make that noise. Because I'm like...
I disagree.
I disagree wholeheartedly. Especially because, like, I mean, a year from now, my book list is going to look different.
Yes.
My 8 books that made me will change.
Yeah.
Because I change. And we're, like, if you're a mom or you're a student who's stressed and starving, who's not actually starving, but it feels like you are in a lot of ways. And, I don't know, like, you're in different situations in life. Books are going to touch you differently. Same thing with rereading a book. It's going to hit different as you grow.
Yeah.
But, like, some books were meant to stay when you were a kid.
Yep.
And I don't want to trash on any books because, okay, I will say who it is. Because, and I'm saying this, like, I'm giving them grace though, of course, because it's like, know what the book's meant to do and like who it's for. But it's Julianne Donaldson's Edenbrook and Blackmore.
I was so shocked when I read that on here. Because I love those books.
I love those books too. I adore
so
them.
good.
And they're so cute. And like, but this is the thing, like, I don't, and this is just me. This is, I know that this is me, and maybe other people have these experiences, but it was like, I loved those books as a kid, and I would like reread them at that age, but reading them now is so cringe.
There's a reason I haven't reread them now. I love them, and we're gonna
so
keep
preserve them that way. That's what I'm saying. Is like you want to preserve those like pillars of your childhood of like books or shows, because even revisiting shows, like the magic is lost when you watch it as a grown up, and you're like, oh, it just doesn't hit the same.
Yeah,
it doesn't hit the same as Saturday morning cartoons with the Sibs. But back to like I don't know, like it just hits different, and like you were saying, it's not like a spicy book in any sense. It's very K-drama safe.
Love it.
I guess. And so like as a kid, it was something like, I don't know, that you could just like escape into, and it was just wholesome. And like they both come from very different angles of like how the romance evolved. But like rereading them, I'm like, it just doesn't hit the same.
Yeah.
And I kind of like, I've moved past it, I think is what it is. I feel like I've outgrown it in a way.
Yeah. So fine.
So yeah, that's one of the books that I would say I regretted rereading. Yeah.
Sad. That's okay. Well, you were very nice with that question. I'm not going to be as nice with that question. Okay. Well. Okay.
That's okay.
Moving on. Okay. So last question for you, Lauren.
Okay.
What is something you're excited to read next, and what is something you're nervous to read next?
Okay. Something I'm excited to read next. Okay. Like I need to think about this. I wrote it all out. I'm like reading this. Wow, you caught me off guard. Okay, so I'm excited to read The Poppy War by R.F.
Love The Poppy War.
And the reason is because of Callie. Callie loves it, and one of our other best friends loves it.
She's only read the first book.
She's only read the first one. Oh, maybe it's changed by now. She'll like watch this and be like, hey.
I disagree.
But it's just something that I've heard about, and I'm like really excited to like start like a series again. I think
very emotional. Have fun.
Yeah, I'm sure. I also anyways, I'm excited for a lot of things. I also have had on my list of like readings, I've had Steinbeck's East of Eden on there since
Another great American author.
Yes.
Here we are.
Oh, I know.
Steinbeck.
Amazing. But I started East of Eden, and I'm liking it so far.
It's beautiful.
It's been on my list for a long time. And I watched this before I read it, and I shouldn't have. But it was mainly because I was like, you know what? We're just going to watch this.
Yep.
It's Atonement by Ian McEwan.
I wanted to read that too.
Yes. It's sad, another sad one. So just get ready.
East of Eden is also
you read
sad.
Atonement and you know it's gonna be sad.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's been on my list for a long time, and by a long time it's been like a year. to give a timestamp on that.
Yeah.
But there's just so many good ones out there that I want to read, and like. Yeah, it's just constantly changing. But those are on my radar that I'm excited for.
Yeah.
Books, yeah.
Scared about.
Books I'm scared about.
Yep. What's a book you're scared to read?
I like that question because it's like you're gonna read it.
Yep.
But you're nervous too.
Yep.
Because it's not so much of like books you'll stay away from. Which, if you're wondering, is Stephen King. 100%. Sorry,
Stephen King.
It's not my cup of tea. I know people have the argument that he's like one of the best American writers. That's okay.
You keep thinking that, but Stephen King's just not for us.
No. I am not a horror person in any sense. Yeah. I take things very, like, I don't know. The thinness between the movie and me is not even there. Like, it's very real to me. And so I have a hard time navigating horror and not being able to sleep.
What did we watch together and you had to sleep with the light on for like a week after that? Not a year.
That would be insane.
Is it A Quiet Place?
No. Quiet Place was suspenseful, less horror. Okay, that's the thing. That's the line. I like suspense. I don't like straight up horror. There is a difference.
That's fair. There is a difference
in genre.
I don't like possessions.
No, we don't mess with that because I believe that happens. I like
we only believe that
like possession, like all that stuff. Don't mess with that. No, thank you. Stay away from that. But I don't mind the suspense, like classic Alfred Hitchcock's. Love those.
Those are fun.
But they're not meant to just horrify you.
Okay.
You know?
I see what you're saying.
So that's what I mean by that. And so I'll stay away from Stephen King. But of books that I'm nervous to read, but I plan to read, and this really, I think, brings out my English side of me, but Dostoevsky, I've read some of his stuff, but I'm very nervous to read The Brothers Karamazov.
Yep. I don't know if I will ever accomplish that. You have fun.
It is on the shelf. Waiting.
Yeah.
And I really want to read it because I've heard such amazing things from people, but it makes me nervous to read.
Yeah.
Also, just the Russian authors, like Chekhov.
There's something about those Russian authors
that I'm like, wow, they nailed it. And I am weak-minded, I guess, because I can't comprehend.
Nope.
I have, so it's very thick, very beastly looking, and I'm nervous, but I want to read it. So that's what I believe in you. The other one is Don Quixote, and this is the thing, you guys. I've gone through my whole English major. I hear the references, never know what they're talking about, and I've never read it, and it's almost like, I don't know, it's kind of insane that I haven't had to read any literature from that because it's such a staple, I think, in literature and like hero arcs or like character arcs. And it's just another one of those beast things that like I think I need to get to, but I'm nervous to.
Yeah. Yep, I agree.
Yeah. And probably any of the Shakespeare I haven't read.
Shakespeare, man.
Yeah.
So, yeah, no.
And everyone's like, Shakespeare's overrated. And I'm like, okay, that's fine. You can say that.
You can say that.
There's definite things there's a reason he's lasted this long.
I mean, so many things are still influenced by him.
I know. And he's
so many things.
He's like out there parroting the Bible.
Yeah.
And now we parody him.
Yep.
So I don't know. I think he's pretty influential, and there's things to... I don't know. I feel like reading should allow you to be able to really refine, like, the things you don't want, but also being able to appreciate the things that challenge you.
Yeah.
I don't know.
No, I agree. I had a Chaucer class this past semester.
Yes. Yeah.
And so Shakespeare was influenced by Chaucer.
Yeah.
And I was terrified. But I went into it, and it's still not something that I would say I love.
Yeah.
But I loved the challenge, and I did really learn from it. He's a funny guy. He's a weird guy.
He's a weird guy.
He's funny. He's funny. And
he's rebellious.
some of like the most, like I learned to love dream poetry for him.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, so good. Just like going like I almost want to reread Alice in Wonderland because I want to be in another world that's just like
Lewis Carroll.
It's a dream and it's weird and you have no idea what's going on. Like
Very obscure.
I discovered I liked that. So
you also are like a big advocate for The Boy and the Heron, which if you haven't seen is a very
Watch
like
The Boy and the Heron. It's just a cognitive dream. Oh, it's so good.
Like, you think Inception is wild.
And then you watch The Boy and the Heron. It's like, what's going on? What are these parrots? And why are they talking?
I know. So, this is like a psychedelic trip for sure.
True.
But you're going to suffer, but you're going to be happy about it.
Harry Potter quote of the episode.
Yes. But.
Yeah, awesome.
That's me. That's me.
That's Lauren in a nutshell.
Woohoo.
Package her up.
With the books.
We know who she is.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Well, anything left to say?
No, I think that's everything.
Well, thanks for listening.
Thank you.
For our first episode. Yeah, had fun.
Woohoo! Go us!
We'll see you guys in the next one.